The Lions have won again. They've beaten the Waratahs 21-10. The game was different to the other games we've seen so far on tour. Len, what are your initial thoughts straight away?
Straight away, it's another win. Some combinations got a little bit more minutes again. The game lacked intensity. I felt like the Lions looked a bit lethargic. I felt like they looked it was just a bit scrappy in many ways. Nothing ever really materialised or got going. Certainly first half. Second half, we had little snippets where it looked all right. But yeah, I felt the Waratahs did a good job in terms of just being competitive and hanging in there and making the breakdown a real issue, making it scrappy. They didn't necessarily play much rugby themselves, the Waratahs, and therefore when a team doesn't play much against you, you don't really get those turnovers to like broken field turnovers. You don't necessarily get the jackals that you want, unstructured play. Didn't really even test the D out. I felt like even to get out of their half, the Waratahs were going sort of 3, 4, 5 phases just to set up a kick, but not going anywhere. Anyway, more about the Lions. Point being, sometimes you're a bit of a victim to who you're playing against. And I think the Waratahs did a good job in terms of dragging the Lions into a bit of a low intensity, scrappy sort of game. And I think the Lions will come off that pitch saying, okay, we won, but we didn't hit any of the standards or heights that we'd have liked to when they set out. I think given what we saw the first 2 games since they've gotten to Australian soil, I wanted more out of today in terms of the intensity, in terms of watching. I was really looking forward to them taking on the Waratahs today. And I ultimately, Coley, when I turned off the telly, I felt a bit like, that was a bit flat.
Yeah, no, I can see those points. I'm a bit more positive. I think if you think about it, like part of me, I'll make excuses for the Lions, but like it's that team has probably been together a couple of days training. You know, I mean, they've had to move around logistics, that kind of stuff. You had Pollock drop out before the game. You had to reshuffle the pack. It looked a bit disjointed, but it looked like sometimes a midweek game for the Lions. Like, you know, you got a team that's come together. It looked like it was trying to, at times, I don't know whether it sort of felt that way, but I would say potentially from the outside, the test team's going to play midweek. And so for those guys, there might have been a bit of pressure on the guys to sort of like, not make stuff happen, but, you know, to individually excel, try and a bit of pressure individually to try and step up in the team. And so force a few issues, which I thought they did. You know, a few passes and stuff like that were forced. But I think as a whole, the Waratahs actually, it was a totally different game. Even like I'm texting you about 8 minutes into the game, I'm like, the tempo of this game is totally different. Like all of the games we've played have been like kick, ball in play, like teams running it back. There's real high tempo, whereas I think that game was like set piece to set piece. It was almost a grind. I think the Waratahs made it that way. And actually, I think the Lions will probably be better for that kind of grind because the Waratahs took one physically. I thought Lions sort of did well to step up to that. You saw the Waratahs constantly sort of kick for the corner and maul. They got some success around the maul. I think the Lions, Australia might target the Lions in that maul area, and it might be different players, but I think Lions got some work to do there. But I think in terms of actually the performance, sometimes it's not always going to go your way. And actually to come through that test, that grind, I think the Brumbies might be similar. But you know what I mean? And also, you don't know the focus, as I said before, but the focus of the training might have gone towards more that potential test team on the Wednesday rather than this Saturday team. So again, the guys might not spend too much time together and they're thrown out there and they've won. And that's the main thing. And yes, it wasn't pretty, but you've won and it's another game and you're further along than you were before the game. So I think as a Lions, again, it's, yes, as a fan, it's like, I want to be entertained, but in terms of actually a midweek performance, they won. It was a grind and they're better for it.
It was a grind, Coley, and you're right. Maybe it is a game that they needed, that type of a bit more sort of physical, tight quarter stuff, mauling, brawling, that sort of game. You know, Charlie Gamble, everywhere for the Tars. He won 4 turnovers. So again, that sort of highlighted. I think their ball movement at the moment, the Lions, is you can still see the shape they're trying to do and the way they're trying to move the ball. But I think it highlighted again today just why Conan's going to be so important for them, is with that shape, with that system they're playing. And even, to be fair, I'm a big Huwipulotu fan, but Aki, he gives a bit more dent, doesn't he? Bundy Aki does, but he doesn't have necessarily as much of the ball playing capabilities. And it depends what you want. And I felt like the game, they just missed that kind of again, that balance in terms of how much they were moving the ball and didn't necessarily have that dent. I thought Ben Earl had an impressive game, actually, Cole. He had 21 carries, which was the highest. He had 2 line breaks, 101 metre carried and 9 defenders beaten. So a real impressive shift from him. But I think that whole back row balance, again, I just felt like the Lions, and with the backs they had, they didn't necessarily... They were quick to go to the width, quick to play out the back. And when they did try and play short, they didn't necessarily ever get the speed of ball on the back of it. Because I felt watching, Coley, and please jump on here, I felt that every breakdown was just that half a second too slow. Just that carry then wasn't able to dominate on the next phase. And it all came down to sort of that. And then you're trying to play short. You're not quite getting the punch. The breakdown's then a second too slow. Then you're trying to go to width. It's not on to go width because you haven't done the bits to dent them through the middle yet to give you that edge bit. And it all ties in. So I just felt like the Lions probably lacked that little bit of punch. And I guess that's where it ties in with you, Coley, is that game is almost a grind today, but the Lions haven't really set themselves up or got the team for that type of game. It is more like we've seen from the previous 2 matches. Ball in hand, high ball tempo, moving the ball, moving the point of contact, speed of ball, where today it almost hurt them with what they had and what they faced.
That would be my next point, which I was going to talk about, is like, if I was to set up a team to play probably against the Lions, I'd be a bit like the Waratahs. Make it a stodge fest, make it physical, maul, brawl, slow it down, take your chances, but like make it attritional. And I thought that's what it was today. And I don't think the Lions are built to play. I'm not saying they can't, but they're not built. In an ideal world, you think of the Lions, it's going to be turnover ball, quick play, shifting the point of contact, all this kind of stuff. They're not really built to play attritionally. And that's the bit where today we're a bit like the Waratahs probably gave them an attritional battle, which is going to be unique to the Waratahs. Maybe the Brumbies a bit, but it's going to be different to the games they play, and it's different how I expect the probably tests we played with Australia. And I don't think that attritional battle favours the Lions, but they came through it, which is important. Again, you ask why it doesn't and what you can do to sort of favour it your way. I thought probably, yes, you need more. There are times when at some point you just got to carry up the guts, but again, apart from Conan, you've not really got massive ball carriers. You've got guys that can run through holes, but not really into brick walls. And you probably need your set piece and your maul to function well. And then you also probably need the halfbacks to either a centre to carry the ball, or you need halfbacks to sort of take control and go, look, we're going to grind our way out of this half, or down the other end of the field and just take control. And I think probably bits of that. I thought Mitchell was great in attack. I thought his kicking game was probably a little bit off, around that kind of stuff. And I thought with the backs as well, as you said before, they're trying to play to an edge, which is the Lions style. And this is not a knock, but it's probably sometimes, if it's not going right, it's not what you need in that attritional battle with the Waratahs. You know what I mean? Like going to the edge quickly, you almost need to pound them down and then go to the edge. So, but that's going to be different to what they're going to face going forward. So yeah, that would be my other point. It's just, they came through it. Yes, they found a way to win, but they were playing within their system, and that's the Lions system, I say, is not probably set up to play the Waratahs unless things are going perfectly. But that's all right, because I don't think they're going to face the Waratahs again, put it that way. Or a Waratahs style.
Yeah, I didn't think that anyone really grabbed the game, by the scruff of his neck. I don't think like the intensity was lacked. And yes, it was a bit stop-start, but there was a lot of handling errors again, a lot of mistakes, like a lot of... Just when you think it's about to get going, it's like, oh, no, it's broken down. It's, loose pass, it's a knock-on, it's a scrum, it's a reset scrum, it's a penalty, it's a TMO. It never got going. And I just felt like the halfbacks needed to really grab the game, and they didn't quite. And I felt like Mitch certainly did second half. You could see Mitch, certainly in the second half, he started to try and pick up the pace, manipulate, coming down short sides, moving the ball, moving the point of contact, bring a bit of field position as well, bring control. There was one where Waratahs exited, Lions carried it back. Mitch was like, nah, like one hit up, ball go back on them, like trying to keep the team moving forward. And I felt like, yeah, there's definitely a period where he really tried to grab hold of the game. I just felt like maybe it could have been grabbed in the first half a bit better than maybe it was.
But I think also, the Waratahs gave you something different in the breakdown, like we said before. Charlie Gamble was all over the spot, all over the place. I think he got 3 or 4 turnovers, which is not, so far you've seen those games, they haven't been ref that way, or there hasn't been a competition at the breakdown as harshly as that, which I don't know which way the test's going to go, but the referee allowed a contest and allowed the Waratahs to spool the ball. He was quite hot on the Lions, sort of. Lions didn't really jackal too much, but was sort of swinging bodies around. I think Ben Earl got it done a couple of times, almost like counter-rucking and hitting the 9 or swinging around. So, like, there's bits where it was refereed slightly differently in the breakdown, which again probably fed into the way the Waratahs played. And the Lions, yes, in ideal world you get quicker ball. I thought Mitch up the tempo second half, but it's tough when sometimes, again, the Lions are trying to play a lot and, not built just to go South Africa route one, which is fine. But that where those games become a bit of a grind, which is that's what your outcome you get. But they win, and again they'll be better for it, and everyone's got another hit out, and you've got some real good guys getting minutes. And so Benel was carrying the ball left, right, and centre. You saw the bits of the Lions shape where they goal line dropouts and stuff. Lions look pretty lethal in that regard. The goal line we talked about it before, the 4-man shape, and they did one today where they hit the winger back inside, which is a classic Ireland move. And you know what I mean? There were signs, but again, it looked a bit stop-start, a bit. There was a couple of knock-ons and stuff, unforced errors, which, again, looked like a team that was sort of coming and had that much time together, which I don't think they have. So, therefore, you know what I mean? I'm not getting too upset about it because it looked like it was a performance that you don't want, but you got, and you've come through the other side of it.
When I said, Coley, about how maybe like no one really grabbed hold of the game as such, like the game needed a bit of direction, I did actually think Owen Farrell would grab hold of this game. Like, without doubt. Like, he would, if he was out there, he would have gone, right, this is how we're going to play. This is what we'd have done. And he'd have grabbed hold of that. I think both, like, tactically, like, territory, distribution, the directness in terms of being a bit more direct, giving the team punch and making the forwards sort of, like, play them up. I think creating aerial contests, but, like, through variety. I was sitting here watching, I thought, actually, Faz would grab hold of this game, without doubt.
I had the same thoughts, Ben. I thought they flashed him in the first half, and then I thought the second half, when you knew it was going to be a grind, and it got about 50, 60 minutes, I thought someone like Owen Farrell, who's been sat on the bench, he's watched everything, knows the flow of the game, knows everything, to come on for 20 minutes and just go, this is what we need to do, as in either be direct or go aerial, not force anything, but just be controlled. I thought that would be the perfect game for him. And despite what all the negativity around him and all the haters are going to say, you know what I mean? If that's his midweek, if that's his role, is to come on and give direction and clarity and purpose to that midweek team, or midweek, for 20 minutes off the bench, I think he would have been perfect for it. But yeah, so you know what I mean? And that's why he would be out there. So yeah, exactly the same thoughts about Aaron Farrell.
Yeah, and we said the other day, Coley, like they don't need to be at their best until they face the Wallabies. That's when they need to be at their best. So that they will be better for it. So I think there's just this overriding of like, and it just didn't quite live up to the hype around this match in particular. However, I will say I was impressed. I thought Cummings coming in the second row there, I thought he played very well. Luke Cowan-Dickie is always like putting it about. I thought the bench that came on really added impact. I was impressed with Mitch second half. As I said, I thought he sort of grabbed the game. I thought Marcus Smith, when he came on, actually looked lively. I thought he brought a bit of zest, a bit of zip. You can see him trying to make things happen. Blair Kinghorn, I thought he had considering he's only just arrived, I thought he had a solid performance. You can see him trying to get involved. You can see whenever he's involved in a tackle as well, he's looking to offload it, very like he does for Toulouse, keep the ball alive. And I thought the centre partnership overall was pretty impressive. I thought Hugh Jones, that first try, for instance, let's just talk that one through. That shape that we keep talking about, 9 to 12 with 13 on a lead. You got 10 sweeping out the back of it with a winger on a shoulder. And again, just that synergy. Now, we saw them try and do the same thing against the Force, and it didn't quite come off, but you could see what they were looking, and today it worked absolute treat. So, Huwipulotu just sticking down his man. Finn Smith showing nicely out the back, which makes that defender then have to make a decision. Does he spot Finn Smith out the back, or does he hit Hugh Jones coming short? But you've also got to be good enough to then pick your decision. And Huwipulotu at the line, great decision, plays him short, off he goes and scores. So impressive performance from him. You can see attack actually, Coley, is certainly in 22, is they're really trying to hit the third man a lot. Hugh Jones' second try, again, he's that third guy out. Quite often teams sort of hit the middle guy. When I talk about middle guy, like that's the pod system. So you have three almost forwards coming around the corner, and quite often teams hit the middle person. And we spoke about Gibson Park on Wednesday and his pass selection with Rory Best. The pass selection is key, but again, Finlay Bealham just leaving it, hits Hugh Jones as the third guy, and that seems to be a bit of a common theme we're seeing. Jack Morgan scored one, of course, coming against the Grain, third guy. Someone scored against Argentina. I think Maro left it for someone. Can't quite remember off the top of my head, and he just breezed past. There's a real tack. It's trying to hit that third attacker in 22 attacks. So, as you said, Colin, there were some themes in there that we could pick up on.
Should we just explain why the Lions are doing that?
Yeah, that would be great. Let's explain it.
Probably as a defensively, if you're a defender, your third defender, you sort of instantly throughout the whole of rugby, you're looking at often the middle guy in those shapes. So that third defender will sprint off the line and probably try and hit the second guy in the pod as hard as he can. But because you're so focused on that, often there's a seam between the third and the fourth guy, because the fourth guy's not as engaged, and so the ability to put the ball in front of the two means that the attacking third man who gets it, like Lions have been doing, there's often a seam for them to run in, or there's an extra couple of yards to be able to run into that defender or whatever, because the fourth guy on the D-line hasn't got off the line as much. So it's obviously a target that the Lions have noticed. And if you can get that bit wider as well, if the second man hasn't been taken out, he can clear the edge of that breakdown, and then you've got a lot of width to play to when you're taking out a lot of defenders from that defensive line. So it's a tactic that, when it works, is very hard to stop, because as a defender, you're so focused on the ball and what's happening around the 9 that you almost forget about that third attacker. And if that ball's lined up, it can cause you a lot of damage.
Yeah, it almost blindsides the defender, doesn't it, Colin? As you mentioned there, it also gets you that little bit wider. So once that, say he does get tackled, he's falling forward, sort of carrying over the gain line, you get speed of ball, and then it's a foot race between your attackers. Can you swing around the corner with more attackers than they can set in defence? So, yeah, there's a bit of a theme going there.
Talk us through Mitchell's try. And as a 9, what are you sort of seeing? Because Mitchell's ability to snipe and run increase a lot, obviously, as the Lions got more possession in the opposition 22, especially the second half. What makes Mitch so good at that, and why is he, you know what I mean? Like, talk us through Mitch, and A, what as a 9, what you're thinking there, and B, well, that's obviously one of Mitch's strengths, and just talk us through why he's so good at that.
Yeah, he's very good at it, Coley, and I'll try and sort of talk through, what it's like in that scenario. So you obviously, the try was obviously off the maul, but let's just talk about that. He did a lovely break off the ruck. Let's just talk about that, and then I'll talk about the try. But from the midfield ruck, he made a lovely little break. So what you got to do is try and create time and space for yourself in a place that's incredibly congested around the ruck area. You want speed of ball. So ball's moving forward, you pick up the ball, you then got to get the ball to your hip as quickly as possible. Why? Because then your elbow's cocked, and then you can almost, and they talk about pumping. They say it a lot. Oh, he's pumping, he's fishing the defender out, and all these things. All that is the ball's in a position on your hip where you can sort of throw these little dummies, these little pumps and the defenders are sort of not quite sure whether you're obviously going to throw long, short, what you're going to do. And Mitch, once he gets the ball to the hip, you then go lateral. So you go lateral and then you sort of go forward. It's sort of like an arc shape. So you sort of go lateral, then forward, and then you're sort of nice and square at the line to engage defenders. Whilst having the ball sort of on your hip, you're pumping, and then all you're doing there is you're running the inside shoulder of that second defender. And by running at the inside shoulder of that second defender, he makes the decision for you. So what I mean by that is, as that second defender's there, if he turns in and engages in you, then then the ball's already on your hip. You can just give it, right? You can either leave it on a nice shoulder ball, or you can whip it to 10 or hit it forward. But you're running his inside shoulder, and as soon as you pump and he goes laterally, so he almost, his hips turn or his head turns, or he's eyeballing the defender outside you, that's when you go. That is your cue. So your decision making is give yourself time, and then your decision is like the second defender almost makes the decision for you, because you're pumping and you're waiting for his body language to tell you the cues. And if he goes laterally or eyeballing a potential attacking runner, then you go his inside shoulder and you can beat him into that space. So he did that great. And then in terms of the try, Coley, like a great maul, really well set up, obviously sort of on the 15 as well, which gives you some room to go short side, which is key. But what the Lions did was they stacked both Finn Smith and Blair King behind the maul there, and then they had that same shape again with 12 and 13. So what you can do on the open, that is, so what you can do off that is you can obviously swing short side, or you can go 9 to 12 again, 13 short, 10 and winger sweeping out the back of that, because you've got loads of time to get there, the way that move runs. But by sitting in behind the maul there, as it drifts infield, it just allows you to then swing down there, which Mitch obviously took. He got the call. He's looked right, great little right foot step, come back. That defender's had to tuck under behind the maul. Mitch comes back left with Finn and Blair King on sweeping around. And then once he's at the line, again, inside shoulder. As soon as he goes lateral, he's that close to the line that even if he does hit him, like he's going to get over the line. So yeah, that's in short really how it works.
On Mitch's try, where they swing around the back of the maul, is
Yeah.
that are there two options to go left and right there?
Yes,
For say Finn
there will
Smith
be
and
two
Kinghorn?
options.
And then are they reading, is Finn Smith triggering it, say, going left, and he will tell Mitch? Who's going left first? Are they reacting to Mitchell, or is Mitchell reacting to their call that they've seen, say, space in the centres? You know what I mean? Like, how does that, who feeds off what there?
You'll have a secondary call, Coley, which could be anything, that triggers that you're going to go on the short side. So that'll be, so you have your first call, which is 9 to 12, and then you have an overriding call, which could be anything, and they call that, and Finn Smith will have called that. So that's how that'll work. That's why Mitch sort of went right to start with, because he's thinking that's the first call. Would have obviously then heard it and gone, oh, actually that's short side. So he banged off his right foot and came back down. And Finn Smith, all he's doing there is you're counting numbers. You're literally counting numbers. You're seeing, like, if there's two defenders down there, the time Mitchell bounces out, you're creating a 3-on-2, etc. So it's a really obvious cue that comes from the 10. As a 9, you've got your banker call, and then you've got your override. He obviously thought it was the banker. Here's the override. Boom, bounces left, well executed. Because they could have just picked them off with hands if had he not damaged. So that's how that scenario works.
Len, give us your Thatcher's Gold moment.
The moment for me was Alex Mitchell's dummy. Lovely dummy, mate. Just sent the defender packing. Tell you what else you might be happy with, Coley, is the scrum, the set piece. So post-match, Tyburn said, we took a step up in the scrum and line out, but it's frustrating not to be clinical. I agree with that. That's probably the frustration of everyone, is probably a little bit more clinical that we've touched on there. But the scrum looked very impressive. The maul looked very good, Coley. I know the Waratahs' depth wasn't great. I think the guy coming on was like the first game he's ever had for the Waratahs, and he got folded in half. But scrum looking positive.
Yeah, I think you saw that scrum from the start, and I think that was probably maybe the frustration Tyburn's feeling is they actually got scrum penalties early doors, kick for the corner, and probably the clinicalness of the maul or the sort of breakouts from the maul didn't work well, and that's where, again, I talk probably two sides of my face in this regard, but like we talk about the Lions making it or coming out the grind, you probably sometimes have to go scrum pen, maul pen, try, and they kind of didn't really. They did one in the first half where they sort of, I think, Waratahs had their try disallowed, Lions kicked, Waratahs overplayed, got the turnover, then Lions kicked for the corner and scored. You know what I mean? You have to, sometimes in that game, instead of running it from 60, you have to go set piece to set piece, penalty to penalty, get field position. That's probably where Tyburn's feeling a little frustrated, is the fact that they got the sort of penalties from the scrum, which is great, but then they didn't capitalise on that and say scrum from a penalty from a maul or a strike from a maul. But again, it's all fixable. So, but no, in terms of that, and say second half of the scrum, I think maybe the bench that came on today might be the starting team in the test. They made a massive impact at scrum time. Yes, again, the drop off from the Waratahs is probably bigger than the drop off from the Lions. But it'd be interesting to see what happens to those three, Furlong, Sheehan, and Genge. Whether I don't know if they came on earlier than you'd have thought in today's game, but whether they sit on the bench midweek, and get 30 minutes, whether they start and play 50. It'll be really interesting to see that. That's what I'm looking forward to. When that team selection comes out, I'm interested to see what the front row combos and who's playing where, just because I'm a nose like that.
But look, lots of comments from our Rory Best episode that we did. They were surprised that maybe didn't talk up Beelum enough as a test starter.
I think Beelum could easily play in the test. If you started him or came off the bench, I think he would do you a great job. I just think, and speaking to Rory Best and stuff, that Furlong is the first choice, and it's probably Will Stewart is the second, because Beelum obviously got called up late for Sander Fagerson. So, you know what I mean? I think that's the thing. I think Beelum's played exceptionally well in the roles he had to do, and if you had to play him, I think he'd do a job. But I just think in the natural order of things, and you look at the front rows, and he's today playing with Cam Dickey, who you suspect is probably second, third, because Sheehan's starting, and Lou said wise, Schumann, you'd say probably Genge and Porter are the favourites. You know what I mean? I think the way it's fell, you should expect him to be that third choice tight end. But that's not to say he couldn't do you a job in the tests at all. And if he started, I'm sure he'd be brilliant. So I'm not, you know what I mean? That was, I think, best in what we were saying about him. And I think the Lions are actually, the front rows, you could pick. The Lions have got great quality in that front row. All 9 players in those front rows could start a test, bench a test, or not play at all. And the Lions would be good in regards to they'd get a performance out of the front row. You know what I mean?
2 games to go for the Lions, Coley. Brumbies on Wednesday, then they've got the Invitational team on Saturday. I don't think the Invitational team, in my opinion, I haven't seen exactly who's playing for them yet. I feel that's a bit more Barbars-esque. I don't expect them to be too competitive. But the Brumbies is almost a last tough hit out, or as tough as you're going to get, given they're deemed the most competitive team in Super Rugby. How important is Wednesday to get right, and do you expect to see the Test team play on Wednesday?
Yes, Ben. I expect the Test team to play on Wednesday. I think, yes, you say the Brumbies will be the hardest opposition they're going to face, and I think the Test team will play, and then it gives them sort of 10 days to roll into the first Test, because you say, I think the Invitational team, I mean, that could be a great game in regards to end-to-end stuff, but the Invitational team's coming together. It hasn't been together long, so you expect the franchise to pose a stronger threat. And yeah, I think it's obviously important. All games are important on the tour, but again, I don't expect it to be a polished, perfect performance. I think it'll be a building up, because I think the combinations probably played a bit more together, and I think this Test team's probably had almost like, I say the Test team, this team against the Brumbies will have had a longer period together off the field in regards to the training pitch and that kind of stuff to get right for this game. So yes, I expect a different performance, or a improved performance, but I think, yeah, the Lions, that'll be the building blocks for the first Test, and it'll be interesting to see the performance and how they play, and basically, but again, ultimately, get a win and work it out after that.
Roll on Wednesday, Coley. I'm excited to see it. It should be a game with intensity, and hopefully the Lions can iron out a few things that maybe didn't go right today and get that right on Wednesday. We, of course, are actually back tomorrow as well, aren't we, Coley?
Yes, Ben. There's a lot of rugby going on this weekend, and we were back on Sunday to talk about the games we haven't spoken about today, and probably a bit more Lions chat as well. But yeah, big game for England versus Argentina tonight, which I am looking forward to, along with the games I've watched this morning.
We may or may not be mentioning Wales versus Japan. Of course, Scotland played the Maoris and France played New Zealand. There's a lot of games to cover. We will be back tomorrow to cover that off with you. So thanks so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and you'll never miss a video. You'll always be notified when they come out. And you do that, and then you won't miss our one tomorrow.
And leave your thoughts in the comments about the Lions today. For the love of rugby.
If you want to drop us a line, get involved with our socials.
Just search for @LoveOfRugby. And if you've listened to all our episodes and need another podcast, go and find Joe Marler's Things People Do.
See you next time.